It's good for us to be together again this evening. And it's, as we're starting to enter this time of the year, there's a lot of the holiday stories that we will be seeing on TV. What's interesting is that some of the stories that we will be able to see are set around a particular set of circumstances. There'll be a small child that is orphan, poor, alone, homeless, and we'll see the way that they have to fight through the cold weather and all the other circumstances, just trying to be able to stay alive. And sometimes we'll see them, they'll come up to the window of a nice stately manor, and they'll be looking in at the rich people that are living in there and their family, and we'll see the way that they've got the house all decorated. They've got a big spread out on the table, wonderful feast. And the child is hungry. And he sees all of the gifts that are gathered around, and he sees the happiness that the family has. But they don't have that happiness. We see this, and we see the child there on the outside looking in. Now, depending on the way the story goes, sometimes the child is not invited in. Nobody inside the house notices the child out there. And we see the child leaving, and they'll go off into the cold to wherever they're trying to nest and just survive. Other times we'll see a different turn in the story where the child is noticed by somebody in the house. And so the family will invite the child in to share the meal with them and be warmed. Sometimes the family will also share the gifts that they've got with the child. Occasionally, even the family will take the child in. It becomes part of the family. It has a home now. It's happy. It's well fed. It's well clothed. It's no longer on the outside looking in. It's now on the inside. If we think about the home that God is preparing for His children, it's going to be a wonderful place. There's going to be God and Christ there to provide the light. There's going to be happiness. There's no pain, no sorrow, no want, no death. And we're told this in Revelation, the 21st chapter, in verses 2 through 4, and also jumping down to verse 23. Revelation 21, verse 2. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, made ready as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is among men, and He will dwell among them, and they shall be His people, and God Himself will be among them. And He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will no longer be any death. There will no longer be any mourning, or crying, or pain. The first things have passed away. In verse 23, And the city has no need of the sun or of the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God has illumined it, and its lamp is the Lamb. We've read and we've studied so many times about what heaven is going to be like. This beautiful, majestic place that God and Christ are preparing for God's children. We want to be on the inside in that situation, not on the outside looking in. The ones that are on the outside are the sinners. They're not going to be able to enjoy the beautifulness, the glory of God. They're not going to be able to enjoy the glory of heaven. In fact, their situation is going to be drastically different. In the parable of the talents, as it's found in Matthew 25, verses 14 through 30, which I'm not going to read that because we've studied that so many times, but the 1 talent servant, because he has not been faithful and done his master's will, the rest of the servants are told to take him and cast him into the outer darkness, where there's going to be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Mark chapter 9 has a more detailed description of what it's going to be like on the outside. Mark chapter 9, beginning in verse 42 and going through verse 48. Christ is speaking, and he says, "Whoever causes one of these little ones who believes in me to stumble, it would be better for him if with a heavy millstone hung around his neck he had been cast into the sea. If your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life crippled than having your 2 hands go into the hell, into the unquenchable fire, where their worm does not die and the fire is not quenched. If your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off. It is better to enter into life lame than having your 2 feet to be cast into hell, where their worm does not die and the fire is not quenched. If your eye causes you to stumble, throw it out. It is better for you to enter the kingdom of God with 1 eye than having 2 eyes to be cast into hell, where their worm does not die and the fire is not quenched." It's interesting that one phrase is repeated 3 times to help us realize how utterly horrible it's going to be in hell. We don't want to be cast into that darkness. We don't want to be cast into that outer area. We want to be in a good, safe place. Now, we also know that this is a true description. We have an eyewitness account of it as it is described in the account of the rich man and Lazarus from Luke 16, verses 19 to 31. And again, I won't take the time to read that. But you remember, the description says the rich man, when he dies, he's just buried, and that's it. On the other hand, Lazarus, it says that the angels took and carried him away to Abraham's bosom, where he's in comfort. For the majority of his life, Lazarus had been getting the short end of the stick, is the way we describe it. He was in just a bad situation. He was doing good to get the crumbs that fell from the master's table. And it seems as though he's having to fight the dogs to get to those. But the dogs were at least helping him, because where Lazarus had sores all over him, the dogs would lick the sores and maybe provide him a little bit of comfort. But he goes to a place of comfort. And the rich man is in a place that is described as a place of torment. This is a place we don't want to go. It is bad. How bad is it? He is in torment. He's describing the heat. He says, "It's so hot down here. I would be happy if Lazarus could just come and take his finger, dip it in some water, and put a drop of water on my tongue. That would be so refreshing." But Abraham tells him that can't happen. There is a gulf between us. No one can cross from one side to the other. Thinking about his family, the rich man says he's got brothers back home Send somebody, send Lazarus, because if he comes back from the dead, they'll accept the word that he shares. But I want them to know how bad I am in. I don't want them to come here. Let them know the difference. Again, Abraham says if they haven't accepted Moses and the prophets, they wouldn't listen even if somebody did come back from the dead. I guess if there was any consolation for the rich man, before too long in the time span of God's time, he'd have company. He'd have his brothers there with him, and they'd be able to all share in this agony together. But that's not what we want. We want the happiness. We want the joy. We want the comfort that comes by being with Abraham and being in his place of comfort. Are we a part of the family on the inside? Are we there enjoying the comfort that we have being part of God's family? But we're ignoring those at the window who are needing assistance, who are needing help. Is that the situation that we find ourselves in? Too frequently, that's the way it seems, because there are so many who are not working, who are not watching for opportunities to help others. Are we maybe selfish, that we want to take the blessings that we've already got and keep them for ourselves? We don't want to share them with those over there by the window. Our Father is constantly asking us to look at the window, watch the window, make sure that if there's an opportunity to help somebody, that we're going to do it. And if we see somebody outside, we want to invite them in. In fact, in Matthew, the 22nd chapter, he even tells us to go and look for them. Matthew 22, beginning in the first verse of the chapter. Christ is speaking, and he's speaking to them in parables. And he says, "The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a wedding feast for his son. And he sent out his slaves to call those in who had been invited to come to the wedding feast. And they were unwilling to come. And he sent out other slaves, saying, 'Tell those who have been invited, behold, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and my fatted livestock are all butchered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding feast.' But they paid no attention and went their way, one to his own farm, another to his business. And the rest seized the slaves and mistreated them and killed them. But the king was enraged and sent his armies and destroyed those murderers and set their city on fire. Then he said to his slaves, 'The wedding is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy. Go therefore to the main highways, and as many as you find there, invite to the wedding feast.' Those slaves went out into the streets and gathered together all they found, both good and evil, and the wedding hall was filled with dinner guests." We are encouraged to go out and find anyone and everyone who is in need of participating in this wedding feast, to come and join us, because we're supposed to be part of it ourselves. But if we fail to do this, are we going to be on the outside looking in? And even though we have this set of instructions, do we kind of hesitate about looking. You know, a lot of times we just don't bother doing what we know we should. We don't bother going out and seeing if we can find somebody and bring them in. But in John the 4th chapter and the 35th verse, Christ warns us that we've got to be active in doing this. He says, "Do not say to yourselves, 4 months more and then the harvest. I tell you, open your eyes and look at the fields. They are ripe for harvest." How many times are we places and we'll hear people talking about the Bible, talking about God, about Christ? But by listening to their conversation, we know that they have a skewed understanding. They don't understand the truth as they should. And we don't take the time to try to help them. We don't take the time to try to correct them. We're saying the opportunity to harvest this portion of the field, that'll come later. I'm not worried about it now. I'm going to let it just ride. But the Lord put us right there in the field to be able to harvest it. The field is ripe. And we see people around us all the time that are ripe for harvesting, if we'll just do it. What we've got to ask ourselves is, am I really part of the family? Am I really on the inside and wanting to share the wonderful blessings that I've got with others who are needing them? Or am I actually on the outside and don't know it? Because of my condition, I'm going to be cast out to the outer darkness. We've got to think about this, and we've got to realize that being part of the family has a responsibility, and that responsibility is to invite others to join us. Our family is not big enough this evening, and I'm not saying that because of just trying to count the number that are present. Our family is not big enough this evening because there are those out there who are needing us to show them how to find the truth. There's going to be a harvest. And it's going to be a wonderful harvest. And it is also an ongoing harvest. Are we ready to participate in that harvest? Are we the family that's going to reach out and invite others to come join us? Are we going to be able to teach them the truth? Or are we actually outside? This evening, if you realize that your life has you outside, you're on the outside looking through the window at this wonderful feast and you can't participate in it. There is an opportunity where you can. Or if you are supposed to be on the inside and you realize that you have not been doing what you should, and maybe there are some things that you've got to watch and be careful about so that you're not cast out like the 1-talent servant was. This evening, if you realize there's something that you need to do to improve your relationship within the family, within God's family, that opportunity is available to you as together we stand and sing our song of invitation.